Your home is not messy because you have too much stuff. Your home is messy because you have zero system. And Scandi style, the real version, not the fake all-white Pinterest version, is the most efficient system for home organization on the planet. Today I am breaking down exactly how the Scandinavians build homes that feel calm, look expensive, and function like a machine, even in a small apartment. Stick around because by the end of this video you will know the 5 rules that separate a Scandi home from a cluttered one. And rule number 4 is the one almost nobody follows correctly. Before we get into it, if you are serious about actually transforming your space this year, hit subscribe now because this channel breaks down design systems like this every single week, and you do not want to miss the next one. The myth of Scandi minimalism. Let's kill a myth right away. Scandinavian design in 2026 is not about owning nothing. It is not stark white walls, a single chair, and empty rooms that look like a hospital waiting area. That was the old, cold version of Scandi that dominated a decade ago. And honestly, it made a lot of people feel like the style was unlivable, like you had to choose between having a life and having a beautiful home. The real Scandinavian method, the one actually practiced in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, is about intentional abundance. Every object earns its place. Nothing is there by accident. In 2026, this has actually gotten warmer and more personal, with designers moving toward oiled oak, brushed walnut, boucle textures, and warm neutrals like terracotta and sage instead of that sterile all-white look. So the goal is not an empty house. The goal is a house where everything you see is doing a job, either a functional job or an emotional one, and ideally both. If a candle on your shelf is not lit, does not smell like anything to you, and was bought purely because it looked nice in a store, it is decoration. If that same candle gets lit every night while you read, it is function. Scandi design does not ban decoration. It just asks you to be honest about which category each object falls into. Why this method actually works psychologically. Before we get into the 5 rules, it is worth understanding why this system works so well because it is not just an aesthetic preference. Cluttered environments create something psychologists call attention residue, where your brain keeps processing visual noise even when you are not consciously looking at it. A room full of random objects, mismatched furniture, and things with no clear home is quietly taxing your focus all day long. Scandinavian countries deal with long, dark winters and small living spaces, especially in cities like Copenhagen and Stockholm, so this design philosophy was not born out of luxury. It was born out of necessity. When you are stuck indoors for months at a time in a modest apartment, your environment has to work incredibly hard for your mental health. That is the actual origin of this method, and it is why it translates so well anywhere in the world, whether you live in a studio apartment or a 4-bedroom house. Rule 1: the one-in, one-out system. The first rule of the Scandi method is the one-in, one-out system, and this is the actual secret behind why Scandinavian homes never look cluttered. Every time something new comes into the house, something old leaves. A new sweater means an old sweater goes to donation. A new mug means an old mug gets rehomed. A new set of sheets means the old set leaves the linen closet completely, not gets shoved to the back. This is not a one-time declutter, it is a permanent habit, and it is the difference between decluttering once and staying clutter-free forever. Most people declutter their home in January and it is a disaster again by March, because they clean the symptom, not the system. Scandinavians treat their home like a living organism that needs constant, small maintenance rather than one dramatic overhaul. Here is how to actually implement this starting today. Pick one category, clothes, kitchenware, or books, and for the next 30 days, every single time you bring something new into that category into your home, physically remove one item from that same category before the new item is allowed to be used. Not eventually, before. This forces the habit to become automatic instead of something you have to remember to do later, which is usually where good intentions die. Rule 2: storage that doubles as display. The second rule is storage that pulls double duty. In 2026, Scandinavian furniture is being designed specifically so storage doubles as display, and seating shifts between configurations depending on what the room needs that day. Think of an oak sideboard that stores linens but also acts as a styling surface for a lamp and a vase. Think of an ottoman that hides blankets but also seats 3 extra guests when needed. Think of a bed frame with built-in drawers underneath instead of a separate dresser taking up floor space across the room. The principle here is simple. In a small space, every piece of furniture should be doing at least 2 jobs. If a piece only does 1 job, ask yourself if it deserves the square footage it is taking up. This matters even more if you live in a smaller apartment, because the math is unforgiving. A dedicated coffee table, a separate side table, and a separate storage bench in one living room is 3 pieces of furniture eating floor space when one storage bench with a tray on top could replace all 3. The Scandi method is essentially furniture triage, constantly asking what can be consolidated without losing function. Rule 3, the material rule. Less variety, more texture. Here is where most people get Scandi wrong when they try to recreate it. They think variety equals interest, so they mix 5 different wood tones, 3 metal finishes, and 4 patterns in one room, and it ends up looking chaotic instead of curated. The actual Scandi method for 2026 is the opposite. Interior designer Kashi Shikanova, founder of Scandi-focused WM Studio, explains it clearly. Keeping your material palette simple and layering different textures together creates richness in a subtle, cohesive way rather than a chaotic one. So instead of 5 different wood tones, you pick one wood tone, oak for example, and you introduce depth through texture instead of color. A fluted cabinet door next to a smooth linen cushion next to a ribbed plaster wall. Same material family, different textures, same calm feeling, but way more visual depth than a room with 5 clashing finishes. This is genuinely the fastest way to fix a room that feels busy but you cannot explain why. Walk into any room in your house right now and count the wood tones. If you count more than 2, that is very likely the source of the visual noise, not the amount of stuff you own. The fix is not buying more furniture. It is often just swapping one mismatched piece so the wood tones align. Rule 4. The hidden rule nobody follows. 1 statement piece over 5 average ones. This is the rule I promised you earlier, and it is the one almost everyone gets backward. Most people furnish a room by buying several decent, forgettable pieces. A decent couch, a decent coffee table, a decent rug, a decent lamp, and the room ends up feeling like a furniture showroom instead of a home. The actual Scandi method says 1 exceptional piece outperforms 5 average ones every single time. Think of the PP501 Papa Bear chair or the Spine Lounge chair from Fredericia, pieces that are minimal in detail but bold in presence. The strategy is to spend real money on 1 anchor piece per room, the sofa in the living room, the bed frame in the bedroom, and then keep everything else around it deliberately simple and affordable. That contrast is what makes a Scandi home feel expensive even when the total budget is modest. People assume the whole room is expensive because 1 piece clearly is. Here is the part nobody tells you though. This only works if the surrounding pieces are quiet enough to let the anchor piece breathe. If you spend on 1 incredible chair and then surround it with 5 other loud, competing pieces, the effect completely disappears. The anchor piece needs visual space around it, both literally and in terms of how busy the rest of the room is, or it just becomes one more thing in a crowded room instead of the obvious focal point. Rule 5. Light is furniture. The final rule, and one people constantly underestimate, is that in Scandinavian design, light is treated as furniture, not as an afterthought. Scandinavian countries deal with brutally short winter days, so the entire design philosophy is built around maximizing every drop of natural light and then replacing it intelligently with warm, layered artificial light once the sun goes down. This means no heavy dark curtains blocking windows, light-colored walls that bounce natural light around the room, and multiple small light sources at different heights instead of 1 harsh overhead light. A floor lamp with a soft white shade, a table lamp, maybe a few candles. Warm, diffused light instead of 1 clinical ceiling light doing all the work. This single shift, layering your lighting instead of relying on an overhead fixture, is one of the fastest and cheapest ways to make any room feel more Scandi immediately. Practically, this means every room should have light sources at 3 different heights, low like a table lamp, medium like a floor lamp, and something soft near eye level when seated like a wall sconce or candle. The goal is that no single light source is doing all the work alone, because when 1 bulb lights an entire room, it flattens everything and creates harsh shadows, which is the opposite of the calm, layered glow that defines this style. The color palette for 2026. If you want the exact palette that is defining Scandinavian interiors in 2026, here it is. Whites, soft grays, and warm beiges still form the base of the room, keeping things feeling open and airy. But layered on top of that base, the trending colors this year are dusty terracotta, faded sage, warm taupe, and blush stone, all pulled from the natural landscape, muted, grounded, and easy to live with for years rather than a passing trend. There is also a bolder variation gaining traction called dark Scandi, which swaps the light palette for charcoal, deep forest green, and navy, while keeping the same clean lines and natural materials. Either direction works. The key is picking one direction and committing, rather than mixing light Scandi and dark Scandi in the same room. A practical way to test this before committing to paint is to bring home 2 or 3 fabric swatches or paint samples in your chosen direction and live with them in the room for a full week, because natural light changes dramatically throughout the day, and a color that looks perfect at noon can look completely wrong under evening lamplight. Sustainability as part of the method, not a trend. One thing that gets overlooked when people copy the Scandi look is that sustainability is not a marketing add-on in this design philosophy. It is structural. Nordic furniture brands like Carl Hansen & Son and Fredericia have built longevity into their design decisions for generations, which is why a well-made Scandi piece from decades ago still looks and functions perfectly today. This connects directly back to the one-statement piece rule, because when you buy one well-made anchor piece instead of 5 disposable ones, you are not just saving money over time, you are also participating in a design philosophy that was built around durability from the very beginning. Fast furniture that falls apart in 2 years and gets replaced is the opposite of the Scandi mindset, even if it happens to look Scandi in a photo. Room by room, how to start this weekend. Let's make this concrete instead of theoretical. In the living room, start with your one anchor piece, ideally the sofa, and build everything else in muted tones around it. Add a storage ottoman instead of a second coffee table. Layer 3 light sources instead of relying on the ceiling light. In the bedroom, the bed frame becomes your anchor, and if it has built-in storage underneath, you immediately free up space that would otherwise need a separate dresser. Keep bedding in 1 or 2 tones max, and let texture, not color, create the visual interest. In the kitchen, this is where the one-in one-out rule matters most, because kitchens accumulate duplicate gadgets faster than any other room in the house. Every time a new mug, pan, or gadget comes in, something leaves. In the entryway, which is the most underrated room in this entire method, keep only what is used daily visible, and store everything else out of sight, because a cluttered entryway sets the tone for how the rest of your home feels the second you walk through the door. Putting it all together, the functional clutter-free home. So let's bring this together into something you can actually use this weekend. Start with the one-in one-out system so clutter never rebuilds. Choose furniture that does at least 2 jobs so small spaces work harder. Pick one wood tone and one material family, then create depth through texture, not through mixing 5 different finishes. Spend your real money on one statement piece per room and keep everything else around it quiet and affordable. And finally, treat lighting as a design element, not an afterthought, layering warm light sources instead of relying on one overhead bulb. None of this requires a full renovation. None of this requires a big budget. It requires a system, and now you have one. The truth about Scandinavian design is that it was never really about aesthetics first. It was about function first, and beauty as a byproduct of that function. A clutter-free home is not a home with less personality. It is a home where every single object has a reason to be there. That is the entire method. If this helped you see your space differently, let me know in the comments which rule you are applying first, and if you want a full room-by-room breakdown of this system, subscribe so you do not miss it.